In the center of the wheel, you'll see this cap that covers all the lug nuts with a 22mm socket. Let's remove all these caps that hold onto the lug nuts. Now with the 22mm socket as well, go ahead and take off all 8 of your lug nuts, and then we'll take the wheel off. I want to put some support underneath this control arm. Not a lot, just enough to make it not go down further than it already is, because at this point it's at the maximum extension and the shock is the only thing holding it in place, but obviously we're taking it out, so we need something to hold it here and not make it go down. Now at the top here you'll see this 14mm nut that we have to break free and remove. I'm going to use a hammer on my wrench. There we go. I also sprayed it with plenty of rust penetrant to hopefully help it along. Okay, so the shaft of the strut is spinning. I knew this was going to happen. So at this point, I'm going to put some locking pliers at the top of it right here to hold it in place while I ratchet the nut off. Use a little bit of heat on this nut. Just be very careful where you aim the flame. Well, for me this nut is just getting completely stuck on the threads, and I don't want to keep using heat because I don't want to melt any wires. So what I'm going to attempt is to actually cut the nut. If you have a one of those nut breakers that actually pierces through the nut, that's great. I'm just going to use a little cut-off wheel. I'm going to keep these wires out of the way, make a little slice in it, and then use my air chisel and finish it off the rest of the way. Okay, let's see what this did. Well, the nut's free. There it goes. Take this washer off, take the rubber bushing off. Let's get this shock out. From underneath, 2 13mm bolts will take the shock out. This bolt broke. I'm going to show you how to fix that in a minute, but for now let's take the other one out. There we go. Take this out. There's your old shock absorber. I'm going to try to apply very precise heat. I want to heat up the control arm, not the bolt or the socket. And I'm using a very small flame, and hopefully that'll heat up just the area that I want, not anything else. I'm going to whack the socket a little bit more. Nope. Looks like I got it. Well, hopefully this doesn't happen to you. The next thing we want to do is compress this new shock several times. That's going to get it started, get the oils mixed up inside and the gases, and that'll allow it to function properly. If you don't do this, you might get some noise over bumps at first. So I put the new mounting nut on. That way I can put a socket over it so I can have something of wider area to press on, otherwise it'll hurt your hand. And then what you want to do is just hold this steady and compress this shock about 3 to 5 times fully, all the way down. Let it come up by itself. It's going to be a slow process, but that's what you have to do if you want to do it right. Okay, now do it again. And like I said, I'm going to do this several times. Every time you compress it, it's going to get a little bit tougher to do just because the oils are mixing up, and that's what you want. That's the purpose of this. All right, this is good. Let's put it into the vehicle. Before we install the shock, go ahead and put on one of these metal washers, and don't forget about the rubber bushing, which has to be facing on the bottom part, has to be facing with this little notch up towards the threads. Take your shock, slide it up, and make sure it goes through the top mounting hole. Start your bolts in. The torque for these is going to be only 18 foot-pounds. Looks like I'm already there. Now at the top, put the rubber piece down with the bevel facing down towards the frame, and make sure it gets centered into the hole. Of course, metal washer, and of course the new mounting nut, which is still a 14 millimeter. Let's go ahead and snug it down. So it looks like the shock wants to spin. Hopefully not. You can just grab it with something like we did to remove it if that's the case. And you want to tighten this down until you see the bushing start to squish a little bit. You don't want to go crazy on it. If the bushing squishes too much, then you will prematurely wear it out. And of course, that's not good. Oh, right there. That feels pretty good. Let's remove the support. And as always, it's a good idea to do the same to the other side. Let's get the wheel back on. Start on all of your lug nuts, bottom them out, and then torque them to 140 foot-pounds. Last but not least, don't forget about the cap that covers up your lug nuts. Slide this on, and it's best to thread this on by hand because these plastic caps can break and strip out easily. So just make them snug enough to hold this in place. You don't have to go crazy tight on these. Okay, take it for a road test.